So you might have noticed that we have changed, and I'm going to move here. First, we've changed as the theme was preparing for some of great dynamics. This morning we talked more about data verification, routing, even information about where the market is going, and we only had operators and some of the CPAs or some of the aggregators arriving at the time at 11 o'clock. It's not that it's not important. Obviously, all the delivery, all the market that made CPAS is still very, very interesting. But equally, some of the things that are happening inside there, very interesting as well. Actually, potentially changing this market right now. So very glad that we are now talking to, we've got two pictures, we've got me as well, but really we're talking to John Bruner, one of the persons that I've enjoyed so much of the changes personally, and Aegis Mobile, which is you are the CEO of. You are now famous, definitely in the US, but so much more in the Europe as well. Well, next conquering Asia, I guess.
Okay. Already there.
You're already there. Oh, you're in Australia, by the way. You're already there. But I think I was saying Aegis Mobile has enjoyed an incredible growth, an incredible importance of what you do, which is, remind me, that thing? How do you define yourself?
Compliance and brand protection company.
Compliance and brand protection company. So here we're talking about the entire thing, which you can see the big theme for math as well has been using data for the anti-fraud, using system to clear up the channels themselves. There is one specific channel what I should probably mention in this as well, which is the US. Now, Aegis, historically, you started in, I believe, in US with direct carrier billing.
With premium SMS.
Sorry, the premium SMS.
18 years ago.
18 years ago. And then things changed very quickly. Then that became your secondary thing, right? Because the market moved.
Right. The regulators came in and basically engaged the carriers to change their practices, but wound up settling down to SMS in 2014.
Don't think we have. Is your microphone working, or is that?
We've got someone coming.
Okay, we got.
Maybe it's
Well,
I'm sitting on it.
That's okay. Well, I think you're so lucky you're going to get my monologue for a while as well, which is, I charge more for those, but it's all coming. So, as we were talking about the premium market changing so quickly, we're seeing some parallels. There you go. Can you talk and can you test?
Can I talk?
Can you hear? Is that no?
Can I sing?
Is that the right microphone, or is it Calvin free?
It's working? Yay!
Oh.
Okay. What do you want to hear?
Well, in the last few meetings, you missed some incredible things. Yeah. Going back, so Aegis Mobile.
Yeah, sorry. So 18 years ago, we engaged in premium SMS, which turned out to be about a $3 billion industry in the United States. We developed lifecycle compliance services, which included the vetting and onboarding of brands, the verification and testing of the campaigns before they were allowed to launch, and the capture of them in our systems is what was approved to be in market. Then intercepting live advertising and the consumer experience live, recording it, testing it for compliance, and then also getting all the transaction data from the carriers, which was the revenue generated, the purchases made, the refunds made, the complaints made to the call centers, and running analytics against that data. But the important thing was we were actually able to tie all of the market performance information back to the brand registry that we were running and the vetting that we were doing. And in that instance, when we shut down bad actors, since we were providing the whole life cycle, we knew immediately who they were. We had a ton of data on them because we vetted them. And so we prevented whack-a-mole. And this was most clearly demonstrated when the United States shut down. The carriers paid in refunds and fines to the federal government and the states about $350 million. And the carrier that we did this for as a full life cycle was only $35 million of that. The other three paid the remaining $300 million. So it was a proven process that if you create this life cycle feedback, know who's engaging your customers, know how they're engaging your customers, and understand the actual performance in market, and then tie that back to the brands. It is a process right there that's documented that it works.
So all of that experience and some concern, another history repeats itself, but we got there, a big request of increasing the level of scrutiny in the market. And potentially some of the operators have been traumatized by that and came back on the A2P market with that experience clearly in their mind. And in fact, let's talk about the US and let's talk about that market. You can see and enjoy MEF data numbers on your own, the historical numbers, but the US has really enjoyed one of the fastest and most incredible trajectory in growth in terms of A2P. So well done to the entire team. Well, you're part of that. So tell us, first of all, as you are involved in that, how would you define this success? Why was it so? What's behind it? The SMS traffic right now? Is it big brands, small brands? What is?
Sure. So I think what Dario is alluding to is roughly 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, we were asked to come back into the A2P SMS market, specifically for 10DLC, to provide a competitive verification vetting authority product that could scale, but also reduce the cost and friction to the brands that were onboarding so that they wouldn't go to other channels. But at the same time, as an independent verification authority paid to find problems, it was deemed that we're going to be the ones that are going to make sure that we identify bad actors. So that said, we basically automated our 18 years of vetting experience, but at that time it was probably 15 years, into a multi-tiered verification platform that could do a very high-level verification in seconds. It could do a deeper dive into behavioral history in 10 to 15 seconds. Or if you wanted a report, we could push it out and do complete analyst research and produce that in a couple of days. But in essence, we developed a process that was able to onboard and verify on a single day in November of 2022, 46,000 plus companies in a single day registered, got verified and or vetted. And again, the idea was to also keep the cost as low as possible. Completely API-based, that's from a sub-aggregator to a primary aggregator to a registry to a vetting authority, and then data flows all the way back through to the brand's awareness of what did they pass, and if there was a score applied, what was their score, in the process. And so today, we've done over 2.5 million brands through this process that are doing 10DLC A2P messaging. And we do about 5,000 to 8,000 companies every day on an average. Even on the weekends, we'll see 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 companies come through.
So 2.5 million brands, so we're definitely talking about, it could be brands, it's almost sole proprietary, or so exactly. It could be your dentist by now. That's a level of penetrations of the SMS services in US, right?
Yeah, because and that's the thing that we're going to eventually talk about RCS, but
Yep.
The idea of generating revenue in this market is the fact that 90% of companies are small, medium companies, right? And so those are the companies that you need to get through your processes. And so the reality is that's what we're seeing. Of 2.5 million companies that we've seen, we're seeing 10, 20, 30, 40,000 Fortune 500 companies, which is a lot of Fortune 500 companies. But when you really look at traffic and the need for barbershops or beauty salons to send out, a confirmation email, or your doctor to send a confirmation, or your real estate agent, maybe sending you listings. We see all of that. Car dealerships. So there's a lot of revenue by allowing the process to open up and bring any company on that wants to get involved in A2P.
So verification is becoming, at least in US, a clear step for what short code was ready before, and now for the long code as well, different solutions like 0800 have got different solutions. But that's, you need to know who you are before you can give you a campaign to run.
Exactly.
And that was a question this morning as well. How is that going to be different, you mentioned, in RCS, because that should be supposed to be a big change. can you tell us already? Because my question is, we don't know yet, but probably you know more, you know better.
Yeah. So there are a number of issues, or initiatives. So we've been working with one of the major carriers in the U.S. for a couple of years now on their RCS launch. Of course, there's been restructuring of how Google, is interfacing with everyone and whether or not there are map providers and things like that. So we're going through a restructure right now. And then we've got other, brands that we're talking to that want to go launch with standard messaging, RCS messaging as a start, because they think they can scale faster with that. But the challenge is that when you're doing branded messaging, you really create potentially a lot more risk if you don't do the onboarding correctly, because you're essentially driving consumers to greater trust with the fact that there's a brand logo, coming across on that message. And so if you don't completely verify that that logo belongs to that company, then it becomes a challenge. Now, most companies that I've seen globally are working with large companies, banks, and companies where they're actually, in their offices talking to them. So they've done direct verification. They know what the logo is for that brand, right? But the reality is 80-90% of companies that are doing A2P messaging don't have registered trademarks or logos. And so it doesn't mean you can't do it, but it changes the automated processes for identifying and verifying rights to use and whether or not those logos infringe on another, registered trademark in any way. And so, over the years, we've been developing processes that are designed to automate as much of the process as we can. So, for example, the USPTO has wonderful APIs for us to be able to pull anything that's registered. And of course, they do have a global reach, but they don't have everything. But there are many others.
PTO? Sorry.
Sorry, the U.S. Patent Office. My daughter actually worked there before she became a lawyer in patent litigation. But anyway, so to me, it's just standard terms, but U.S. Patent Office. We're looking at global sources, but a lot of the sources we're seeing in the rest of the world don't have APIs built in. And while we have tremendous crawling technology, you don't want to violate the rights of any sites that you hit. So, if we're able to crawl and capture, that's great. We can also obviously use search engines and do reverse lookups and matches like that, very automated as well. But like I said, so it becomes a little more complicated to get to scale, and the trick is what percentage of automation can you get to? We made tremendous progress in that space, and so if the data is available, we're hooking up to it. In other ways, we're using our crawl and search technologies and reverse lookup technologies that are available to us, as well as any machine learning and AI tools that are in our bailiwick of tools that we use across our services. But so one other thing along this, so the other initiative that's launching in the U.S. is branded calling. And our CTIA is the Cellular Telecommunications Industry Association, which is a pretty big association, and they are driving a standard, for onboarding agents and vetting authorities and all of that. But more importantly, we're involved as a verification authority. But more importantly, we're looking at this from a how do you create that omni-channel approach, right? Because if we've already vetted a brand and we're monitoring them for whatever reason to make sure that nothing material has changed with them, and we've already verified a logo that they have rights to use and that it's in the right format and it doesn't have any malware associated with it, but anyway, all the important things. How do we expand that across multi-channels in terms of providing tokens and other identity features that can be used as a verification within those other channels? And this is something we started within the A2P space, where we actually do provide a token directly to some of the direct aggregators, CPaaS providers, that they can then provide to the registry as verification that they've come through us and gotten their score and that their brand has been vetted. So how do we expand that to branded calling, branded messaging, A2P SMS? Hopefully we can get into some of the over-the-top channels in that space as well, because it's really about making this easy for the brands to engage this market, and it's a great market for them to engage.
So back to back questions, maybe all the full architecture in terms of what is RBM in US is still missing. But the building blocks, you're starting with the view that at least that verification potentially could be done once and then deployed as an enterprise. You go and pick up your branded calling, your RCS, even see your shortcode and your 10DLC with that same token that you have once done.
And of course, the other one that we've been involved with for roughly 10 or 11 years now is the carrier APIs, right? So where they're actually providing identity data through the APIs. Aegis is involved with one of the larger carriers in terms of doing verification and onboarding of the brands, software companies that are going to be accessing those APIs. And again, these are more integrated services from the carrier industry. And again, we position ourselves, though, to protect those carriers because it's their customers that are exposed.
Great. Well, we talked quite a bit about US. We talked about the vetting specifically. Here, small sponsor messages I seem to be doing a lot, and I think Team has done it as well. We have a working group called Trusted Messaging right now, which is looking at exactly some of these topics. Is how do we make sure that we reestablish the level of knowledge between what happens from the sender to the final person who receives a message. So, and
I was going to say one other thing that I meant to mention, though. One of the interesting architectures that we've established with 10DLC in the U.S. market, and it's in partnership with other companies. So we have a registry called the Campaign Registry where all the aggregators are submitting brands and they're kind of a communication hub with all the players. But we also have a company called NetNumber that is text enabling those phone numbers in the networks, but they're actually involved in the routing. And what they're capable of doing in the structure that they've created is to prevent spoofing. So in our 10DLC channel, you cannot spoof a phone number. And what that means is across our three companies, we've tied a phone number to a campaign to a brand name. And so one of the things that we also do for one of the major carriers and talks with the others is we get the Apple complaint data. And for that Apple complaint data, we're getting millions of swipe right report junks, right? And the funny thing is, there's a lot of noise because people are clearing out their inboxes. But if I were to tell you 20-30% of those messages are legitimate bad messages, and we're able to use machine learning and AI to identify those, extract the information, figure out the sending phone number, because that comes through. We get the sending and the receiving phone number. We protect the receiving phone number. That doesn't go anywhere. But the sending phone number we're looking at, we can then tie that back to a dip into the NetNumber database, tie that back to an aggregator, but we can also go into our database and tie that back to the brand itself, and then basically move that business record to a bad actor database, right? And that's how we originally prevented whack-a-mole back in the premium SMS days, is if we're notified that an actor has been shut down by any of the carriers, if they try to re-register as a new entity, we've got a lot of data to match on. Back in premium SMS, it'd be like, wait a minute, we shut down this company last week, and now this company has the same bank account, but it's a different CEO, different name. But how do they have the same bank account? Well, it's a sister's, cousin's, brother's mother that's come back as the new CEO. We do the same thing within 10DLC, but we don't get bank account information. But so a big part of what we're doing is getting feedback from the market to identify bad actors and create a barrier that works very hard to prevent them from coming back, because that's what they do. But the other thing we can do is find out, wait a minute, there's actually 40 companies related to this company in the registry, right? And so they're going to start spreading it around. So there's a lot of good intelligence here.
But you're already touching on, well, going to be one of my questions really, which is vetting is one thing. Yep. But there is, vetting by itself does not really guaranteed a fraud-free event. So you're now using the big data back from Apple to do an AI to do that. What else? What else is needed or potentially justified to be done in the market?
Well, honestly, it's extremely important that we all work together. So, like I said, one of the things that we're working on now is how do we notify the direct CPAS that this phone number is sending harmful messages. They have direct relationships either through the sub-aggregators or directly to the brands to take action as well. We're also working on dashboarding that information back to our customers so that they can look across their partners and understand who's working things to good directions and who's not. So opening up that communications channel across all of us. We're also, we work with Proofpoint and Adaptive in the U.S. market as well, two of the firewall companies that, are global to my knowledge, but, how do we communicate better information to them? Because when we find a bad actor, we'll deep dive and say, okay, they got 40 companies, but they also own 4,000 URLs globally. Hey, firewall, here's a bunch of URLs that this bad actor owns. They haven't hit you with them yet, but now you've got an expanded data source. So it's interesting because if we can create communications across all the players, because a lot of the CPaaS, they're trying to stop fraud too. We're all trying to stop fraud. Under contracts, we can't always communicate with each other. So how do we create a market where we can share the information that's required to attack and take away those bad actors that are attacking our customers? So that's something we're moving towards. Obviously, sometimes contract requirements are barriers. Competition can be barriers. But the best we can, we're moving in those directions.
So there are still some challenges, but say your message is sharing data. Potentially these online and these people here are the people that should be sharing some of the data. But you're saying not because of what was the reason? Is it just contracts? Is it something where we can collectively do to get that sharing happening?
Well, like I said, it's competition, it's contractual, but at the same time, if we can identify only what we need to share and make sure we're not violating any regulatory, actions or any kind of contractual legal issues, that's where we're moving to. But as I said, when we start down these channels, we don't necessarily think to the future about fraud and how it's going to impact us. And so when we're setting up contracts, sometimes we are potentially restricting something that we can do in the future. It may even be a revenue opportunity that we're restricting, but on the flip side, it could be how do we fight fraud restriction? But it's we learn as we go, and sometimes it's going to cause us to have to go back and change our relationships. But
we look at the long term rather than the short term, at least the volume of tomorrow, but that could compromise the overall healthy of this channel. And because of what we say this morning, we love SMS, we love our channels, but we need to take care of it. I look at the watch, we don't have a lot of time. Time flies. Well, I should know because yesterday we had lunch and it was a lovely breakfast. We had breakfast and it was a lovely, but almost a lunch. It was 2 hours. Maybe it's a couple of questions and then it goes on. But could I ask if there are any questions for John from the room? If not, I have one more and I use mine. But no, you're all content and online as well. So, but my question then is looking at the future. The previous panel was really named about the future. So same for you is, what do you see happening in these, what we call a business messaging right now, but it might have a different name in 5 to 10 years. What do you think is happening here?
As I said earlier, I'm pushing for the omni-channel, approach, for customers, so that, and how do they carry their own verification, package with them, right? We talk about self-sovereign wallets, digital wallets. We talk about identifying specific people within a company, so that, for example, with 5G calling or branded calling, it'll show up as a purpose for the call, the name of the person calling you, their business title, and the logo. You can do that with messaging on smart messaging. So I see all of that coming, but like I said, the more important thing that we see, because we do see the same brand coming from multiple DCA, direct aggregators or sub-aggregators, because they do use more than one. And so, because they're coming through a separate, the process that's created in the market says, vet them again, right? And so to me, that's not good for the brand. It increases cost to the channel. Not much, because like I said, our charges are in the dollars, the single dollars, if you will, for onboarding. Whereas when we came into the market, it was 4 times more expensive than what we've come up with in terms of charging. But if we can actually get them to carry their own credentials and be able to update those credentials based on the risk, that's being, given to them to carry, then it probably create even more efficiency. So we're not redoing companies because they're using different service providers.
Well, good news for those of aggregators that are talking to brands right now, knowing that at least we won't have to double up your prices. Not so good news for you. You make less money, but you're happy with it.
No, our goal is to make sure that every company that wants to participate can participate. It's not a cost barrier. It's not a process barrier.
It's a quality of experience. It's overall. It's a different promise that you have within your stakeholders, all the industry you can represent. So there it is. So we have a couple of challenges. One is a challenge in omni-channel, in managing, but also a challenge in making this an efficient delivery channel as well as secure. So there it is. Plenty we have to go and talk to, but now I'll go back and hand it over in the hand of Nick, because for the time being, is a big thank you to John Bruner, the CEO of Aegis Mobile. Thank you.